Welcome to part 2, the basics of glass cutting of the stained glass cutting series. We're going to talk about the fact that you need your glass clean. A dirty glass makes it harder to get a good clean score line. It's harder on the cutting wheel. And then you want to take and you want to cut on the smoother side. See, it has a lot of texture and a lot of different characters in the glass, and this side's a lot smoother. Or maybe your glass has a very pronounced texture. You always want to score on the smoothest side possible. Now, it's very possible on your glass that one end will be smooth and the other one's got more texture to it than the other side. So you just have to look at your glass and score according to that factor. All right, the number one way people get cut is because of little flares or sharp points coming off of glass. Textured glass is one of the most notable ones for having that. It can happen on any glass. Notice I got my thumb behind my glass cutter to help move it along. We'll back up, talk a little bit more. But first we're going to see if we can come up with a flare. I'll take running pliers. They're in line with the score. We'll slowly hear the light pop. We'll go to the other end. Okay, it didn't follow the score all the way, but that's all right. It did what I want it to for the moment. Can you see these little sharp needle type pieces or pieces coming out of the glass like this? Those are flares, and that's what's going to cut you. That's the number one way you get cuts. So you have a lot of different options. You can take a diamond encrusted file and go across it. Now I can run my finger across there, no chance of getting cut. Or I could take the side of my Grozing breaking pliers and dull it that way also. Either one will work just fine. So the number one way to get cut with glass is not getting rid of your flares. There's two places you tend to get cut more than others. One is when you're grinding and you have flares there and you're pushing against the edge of the glass. The other thing is that piece of glass that I put back in storage, if it has flares on it, when I go to get glass out down the road, I'll probably get cut on those because you don't always see them or think about it. So get rid of your flares, and that's going to cut down the majority of your glass cuts. The other thing is you get little glass shards on your work surface. And so if you aren't working over a grid system, keep a little whisk broom handy and sweep it off. I also like to have just a little tray I can put my small piece of glass in to help keep my area uncluttered and less I handle these, less chance of getting cut. Because these small pieces, I'm not going to worry about cleaning the flares off because I'm going to throw them away anyway. The other thing, if you get a small piece on your board, you put your glass over the top, you go to score, it creates a pressure point and you can cause your glass to crack where you do not want to crack. So, that's the intro. You want clean glass, score on the smoothest side. And now, let's start off with straight lines. You can either use, I've got a framing square up against a straight edge, and I can put a triangle along here, and that will give me nice straight lines. Another option, you have triangles that have a little lip on them that will rest against the bottom of the glass, and you can use those for scoring. And that works well also. There are other options. You know, I have this larger one made for stained glass, but look how thick that is. If I tried putting the glass on it, it just sticks down too much. It wouldn't be a tight seal, so I'd have to let this glass sit off the edge of the table just a little bit to make this one work. But it does have its purposes. It's the same principle if you use some type of carpentry square. It's just a little too thick here to rest on the table. The glass has too much slop there, but you can still use it. A speed square has even more pronounced lips on it, and again, you'd have to come off the edge of the table to be able to use it. So those are options available. We're going to come back here, and since we already have the framing square set up, we'll nestle it in the corner so the glass can't move around. I'll take my glass cutter. We're going to start making some narrow strips. Whenever you cut a straight line on something fixed like this, you want to stand your body to the side opposite what your hand is. Now this video might come out backwards. I'm not an expert on this, and so I'm cutting right-handed, but when you look at it, it might look like I'm cutting left-handed. So sometimes if it seems like things are out of sync, it's a program flipping this image around. So I'll just set my glass cutter here, put my straight edge next to it. This is a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle. And I'll pull towards me. But again, my arm is past my body, so when I score, I can get a straight line. If I stand in front of it and I score, my elbow is going to go sideways off my body and cause me to want to pull away from the straight edge. So you want to stand in line. If you're doing a long score, take the foot on the same hand side your glass cutter is being held and put it back behind the other foot and just rest your toe on the ground. Then you can reach out, pull, and as you come back, just rock back onto the back foot. And you get a nice long straight line. It's easier on your back and you're more apt to be successful. So we're going to make several scores here, so we can try to make this video relatively short. I'm doing the videos in a lot of installments to, one, make it easier for you to find what you're looking for instead of having to weed through a real long video. And two is sometimes I don't have time for a big video, so we just watch it in sections. Now I said there are several options for running scores. First one we're going to talk about is a handbrake. And what you do is you pinch your glass with your fingers bent and you rock your knuckles together. It pulls it sideways and slightly lifts. Glass cutting is a two-part option. First you break the surface tension and then you separate it along the score line, or you run the crack down the score line. If you take a piece of duct tape and you just pull on it, it generally doesn't tear. But if you nick the edge just a little bit, maybe use your teeth or you use a sharp edge sticking out or a nail, all of a sudden it just rips real freely. It's the same thing with glass. So now we've nicked it. We're going to pinch, rotate our hands, and notice it pulls the glass apart. There's no way I can cut myself. So that's a very safe way to do it. All right, so that's your handbrake. That's our first option. We'll put this away for now. We'll work on that in a minute. Now we got narrow strips. They could have been narrower, but for visibility, we're going to keep them this size here. They're about 1/2 inch each. And we'll start off with what's called running pliers. Running pliers have a frown. They have an index marked that you line up in line with your score line. And the whole point of running pliers, and I'll show you several different types here in just a moment, is they push up in the middle and down on the outsides to get that same pull and lift action as what we use with our hands. So we're always going to push up under the score and push down on the sides. When you have a series of small strips, you generally take the outsides off first, and we're going to do a slow, gentle squeeze. But first, let's back up here. This is a set screw. I'll show you several other running pliers. None of them have a set screw, only the metal ones. These are for a bigger or standard size hand. These are for small hands. But they same principle. These are spring loaded. These use your fingers to open and close them. Not a problem. To set the set screw, you put it just barely inside there. Don't go to the middle. And you screw that down until it makes contact. and we made contact here. Then we take it out, and then we back it off 1/4 turn. And then you can see you can only close the jaw so far. The idea is people were not smart enough to not squeeze too hard and too fast and over squeeze it. When you over squeeze it, if you're in a curve, instead of following the curves, it might just go off on a straight line. So whenever you use running pliers, I'm going to back it out because I don't like the set screw. Because we're going to work on hand control. You go slow, gentle, gradually increasing until you hear a small pop or click. At that point, you hold your pressure and let the score coax its way down the line. And then you can add a little more pressure if you need to. It's just a slow, steady increase until it goes. Because it's a short straight, it probably will go right away, the whole thing. Okay, so you heard the pop and it went at the same time. And what I can do is I can take my container here, and I can put my extra glass in there to keep my area clean. So that's how these work. The smaller ones are the exact same thing. They're also available, get my brush moved to the other side, in the nylon handle system. And notice there's no set screw. But they work the same way. They have a bump in the bottom jaw, and the chop jaws both have a bump on the outside to create the pressure. You got the green ones for smaller hands, the black ones for bigger hands. And these actually may come in different colors too. These are made by Fletcher. And these are firm enough, they work pretty good. The red handle ones that are made by Studio Pro have a more spring to the handle, and it's hard for me to feel the score, so I don't care for those too much, but the Fletchers work real well. And so we'll do the same thing here. We'll put it to where the line's in line with the score line. And there we go. We'll set that to the side for a minute. Now, what you want to do, instead of trying to take each one off separately, you divide it in half, and then you have these two, and then half these two. Same principle. This is the same idea. It's a snapper by Glass Star. It's got a bump in the bottom jaw and two on the upper outside. It's actually a little narrower than some of the running pliers, so when you're doing narrow strips, it might come in just a little handier. It does not have a reference line, so I added that one on. It helps remind me which side goes up. And it also helps to put us in line. And you notice that we're doing the running pliers, we don't have to have them very far in the jaws, just a little bit. And so they work just fine also. So those are some different options we have for running pliers. Now, these are called Ring Star pliers. And these are Silver Snit. The Ring Star is by Glass Star, and Silver Snit is his own company. Where these vary is, most running pliers have to be straight in line, because this has an adjustable or rotatable top jaw, and this uses a round circle that's open in the middle, and they both use a pyramid or point, a cone sticking up in the bottom. You can do them from the side also. So let's start off the Ring Star, and I can actually look down through the hole and see where my score line is. So I can put it here, I can turn it here. Any of those will work because my pressure point's up under the score line, no matter which way it's turned, is still there. I'm going to get back up here, make sure I'm where I want to be. And so I use slow, steady pressure. And there we go. I'll set those aside. With the Silver Snit, there's an index mark here to show you where the pointer is on the bottom. That jaw has to be rotated if you want to be somewhere beside straight. So it goes crosswise to your score line. But I can again rotate it sideways and so it works pretty handy for that. If I want to do narrower scores or strips, I put my thumb behind my glass cutter so I can guide it. Sometimes you'll have little air pockets inside your glass, and your glass cutter will hit it and stall. If you have your thumb behind it to help guide it out of it and keep moving, then you won't lose your score line because you want it to be uninterrupted. Now, if you listen to the sound, you hear light zipper sound or score sound. And that's kind of what we're looking for. And if you look, you see that little white dust? That's almost too much. You don't want it. Right here, there's still a score line, but you can barely see it. And that's more what I'm looking for. If you put too heavy a pressure on it, then it causes microfracture sideways, which we talked about in the first video for reason for not tapping. Same thing happens if you over pressurize. But if I try using my running pliers, I don't have enough difference between the center and the sides here within the glass to really use them properly. And here, it fits right between my bumps on top. Same with the smaller ones. So what I'm going to use are braking pliers. What braking pliers are, they have straight tip. They meet at the end, but not back here. And that way if I put it on glass, I'm not going to crush the edge here because it's not touching. And then I also have a combination plier, which is a braking plier and a Grozing. These have serrated jaws. The braking pliers have smooth jaws. And what we'll do is we'll put the flat on top, close but not touching the line. We'll do the same thing on the other side. We're going to pull sideways and lightly lift the tip. So we pull sideways and lightly lift. And so you can make pretty small. You really can't get anything smaller than this because it will generally not follow a very long line. It will just break off in pieces. So if you have an edge of glass that's not square and you need to square it up, make sure you leave about 1/4 to 1/2 or 3/8 of an inch from the edge that you're trying to square up so you can get a good clean run down through there. All right, we're going to back up to the first Grozing pliers. You have standard width on tips. You also have narrower tips. What Grozing is, remember I said you use flat jaw on top? Some people will say you have to turn them upside down for Grozing, but it really doesn't matter. It depends on which action you go. If you pull them up, with your wrist, then leave the flat part on top works just fine. You can turn it over if you want to, and you can go downward a little bit, and you can slowly nibble pieces out to, before they had grinders, this is what they had to do, is they had to nibble pieces out. The narrower jaw ones allow you to get in a little bit tighter areas. Oh, I got carried away there. But you got the idea of how they work. You can either have the curved jaw on bottom or top, whatever works better for you. There is no hard, fast rule. Alright, we're going to go back to braking pliers here. These are wider jaws, but they're still flat. They meet at the middle and not back here. These are normally what we use for stained glass. These are more for thicker plate glass. And then there's also ones, the same idea, only they have a built-in bump or fulcrum on the bottom. So instead of when you pull sideways, lifting a little bit, you just have to let it rest and push down the handle. And it does the same thing. It gives you that little, because it doesn't take much, just a little upward angle to get it to run. All right, let's back up here a little bit. And I'm starting to get glass shards. So I'm going to set this to the side. Get these out of the way. And I'm going to sweep off my area. Because one, I don't want to get those glass pieces in me. If you do get them in your skin, you're going to have to dig them out. They will not fester out like a splinter will. So that's the incentive for keeping your work area clean. And two is I don't want anything underneath my glass when I'm scoring. It will break. All right, and next option we have is called the Morton Safety Break system. Get one in package here. It has 3 pieces. It has the push block, it has the Morton runner, and the button. Now the Morton runner comes with a lanyard that you can hang around your neck so you can keep track of where your runner is. But I hate things around my neck, and I left the lanyard hooked on it. It would get snagged on tools or glass on my table and make a mess. So I just take it off and get out of my way. If you look at the Morton runner, it's spongy. So I can take and push up under a score line into it, and it'll push down on the outside edges. It works the same way as your running pliers or your handbrake does. So I can sit on top of the glass, perpendicular, crosswise. And did I score that? I don't know that I did score that. Yep, I did. It's just, I'm going to take a little bit of alcohol on this rag. I use rubbing alcohol. All right. Now, can you see the score line is not very much there? It's pretty faint. That's what you're looking for. You want a definite score line, but you don't want any powder around it. Some glass actually scores a lot better with a very faint line than they do with a medium size or weight line. And you get a lot less micro vibration or fractures, and it just works a lot better. So I'm going to put this crosswise on there, and I'm just going to pinch. And again, the flex motion, and because it stays together, I'm not going to cut myself. Now I'll take my glass cutter, and if I can find it, there it is. Remember I said when you're working against straight edge, you pull. Every other time, you're going to push. And what you do is you got your darker spot in the middle for your cutting wheel. Now some cutter heads have a black coating on them, and it makes it a little harder. But I'm going to put the shiny side on the line, because I want to cut on one side line or the other. I cut on the side of the piece I want to save. If I want to save this piece, I'm going to cut on that side of the line. And the reason why, if you get cut any which way, you're going to have, one, you're not going to have a straight line. Two, is it's going to be any black line you see on there, you're going to have to grind off. Well, if I cut it off, I don't have to grind it off. I just lightly hit with the grinder, make sure there's no flares, and I'm good to go. And sometimes, as clean as this line is here and here, I won't even have to hit those with a grinder. So I'll put my thumb over here so I can start right close to the edge. And when you cut glass, it's not a race. You want to just go nice and steady, because you want a complete score. And you notice I go off the glass. Some people say don't do it, you're going to chip the edge. Well, I'm not really chipping the edge, but if I do chip the edge, it's going to be such a minor amount, it won't cause you a problem. But the more the glass is scored, the nicer it's going to look. Alright, so we talked about you can just pinch it to break it with the mortar. I can turn it, and you say, okay, that's too hard on my finger, I can't do that. I've got a little button here that's designed to fit inside the Morton grid. It rests right in there just like the oil well does. And I'll move stuff out of the way here. Then I can set it over top of the button, and this is spongy just like the runner is. So I take the push block, and if you have arthritic challenges, it's really handy. And I can just rest my hand on top of it, or I can squeeze it, and it goes. Now as I'm making these runs, I want you to notice how there's no mark on one piece, but there is on the other piece. Each one's that way. That's a skill you want to develop. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's worth developing. The next one here, I got my runner here. It's spongy. I can turn it upside down. Just push down with my thumb or finger. Look at that. I didn't have to have it just in the center. It actually did 3 of them for me at the same time because the whole thing's cradle. So that works great. The other nice thing about this, I don't have these scored yet, so I can't do it, but I will in a moment. Remember how we talked about with the ring star or the silver snit? You can go and follow it around and work your score line. Well, sometimes, look, it won't reach out here to get this one here, but the Morton runner, it will. You can be anywhere on that score line, on that glass, and you can use the Morton runner. So that's got more flexibility than the ring star or the silver snit. The safety brake system sells for about 20 bucks. Ring stars were selling somewhere around $50, $60, and the silver snits are about $90. And I'll be honest with you, I have them, but I very seldom use them. I have to dust them off when I do demonstrations. So we got these pieces here. Still got one more to go. And so it's got a curved end on it, and we can take and use that for narrow stuff. Then we're going crosswise. Oh, it's going to be difficult to me. There we go. But I find when I try using the rounded end, I get a little bit more of a flare problem because the top of this is flat. And the idea is because it puts pressure out here, on wider pieces works great. When it's real narrow, it tends to create more of a flare. So for narrow strips, even though it's advertised to work well for that, I never use this part because I'm better off using my two either Grozing braking or braking pliers or a combination of. But for other scores like these, it works just fine. I'll get rid of this stuff here. Let's say you don't have a Morton grid system, but you like the fact that arthritically, and I'm going to sweep around a lot, you like the safety brake system. These are flat, so you can just set it here, set it on top and use it that way. So I'll just take this glass here, and I'll just run a little curve, set it on here, and push. It works just fine. You can also take like a paint stir stick and drill a little hole and set it down inside of that. So you don't have to have a grid to make use of the safety brake. Now we have another option available with that. And I heard a little click under it, so that means I didn't get it swept. This is no longer sold by the company, but you can generally find them on eBay or maybe Marketplace. This is called the M80. It's got a button fastened to the grid. This top push block has a curved surface like the end here does, and it's rotatable, so you can change your angle. It's got a nice deep throat, and so we can take and set this underneath here. And the nice thing about this, you don't have to squeeze it, you can just push down on it. And again, if you have arthritic problems or grip problems, you can actually just use your arm. We'll set it underneath there and just lay my arm on it. So you got carpal tunnel or something like that, the M80 is really handy. We're going to back up just a moment here. These are Grozing braking pliers. you'll hear spoke both ways. You put the flat jaw on top for breaking glass. Breaking pliers, both jaws are flat, so it doesn't matter which way you turn them. The Grozing breaking combination pliers have both a standard jaw and a narrow point jaw option available to you. For running pliers, we have several different options. The Snap It, the Fletcher nylon handle ones, and then your metal ones. This is probably what I use the majority of the time. And again, they push up in the middle of the bottom and down on outside on the tops. All three types. And so those are the really common handy tools. Sometimes we're going to use a combination of options. So let me score this line here. This is the piece I'm going to save, so I'm going to score on that side of the line. And I know what my pressure is. You don't always hear that zipper sound, but I know I'm getting a score because I know what my pressure is. Notice I sway my body from side to side. Try to keep my head out of the way so you don't see my bald spots. Alright, so I'll take my running pliers and I will start the score. Listen for light pop or click. Okay? Then I'll go to the other end. So this score here, I can faintly see on the back side, comes down to about here. The other one up here, you can faintly see it. Nope, not on the back side. And it's coming up to about here. So I haven't quite finished the score. I can slowly apply pressure here or here, but I run a risk of it going off the side. I can take my Morton runner and I can pinch. I can pull it out that way. Now, there's a flare here. Can you see the flare? I don't want that. So again, I'll bring it over here. No way to cut myself now. And on my piece I have here, again I can also use, if I can find it, my little nylon or diamond crusted files. And there, if you look, you can see the flare that flew off the side. Now there's no chance getting cut. So, again, we used a combination of options. We used the running pliers to start it from both ends. And then we use the Morton, which I said earlier, we can use it anywhere on here to finish it off. But let's say, John, I don't have a Morton system yet. And so we're going to do another score here. We're going to come off this other side here. This one here is going to be a fail. And I'll explain why. We sometimes learn as much from failures as we do from doing it right, because then we'll know what to avoid. Remember earlier I said you're only going to get something much smaller than that to break where you want to. See how narrow we are here? Even if I could get that to score, that would break somewhere down the line, either while you're soldering it or when it's being handled. So these are waste pieces. This is not actually something I want. Therefore, I cut on this side of the line. But we'll bring our thing over here. Listen for a click. And I can bring them down and come around the corner a little more. I heard the click there. And I look on the back side, it comes all the way down almost to here. Now if I go from the other end, see, there's just no way that was going to make it. It wouldn't held up. But I can take my Grozing braking pliers or my braking pliers, either one. And I can get on here and just pull sideways and lightly lift. The pulling action is important to be successful with using Grozing braking or braking pliers. Now see, I've got pieces sticking out. I can pull up a little bit and kind of file them off using the serrated pieces. And again, I want to make sure I don't have any flares, so I just take my little file. Now I'm safe to handle. It's not real smooth. I can do that with the grinder. But I knew that was going to be a fail because it was just too narrow there. Alright, now we're back to sweeping our area again. Do that frequently. It's well worth the time. My thumb's behind, guiding the cutter, because my other hand is mainly supplying downward pressure and the angle of direction. This one's supplying the forward movement. Some people say you have to break or run each line as you score it. But no, you can make multiple scores, as you saw throughout this. I can take these and start. There's my little click or pop. I have to have it far enough that the jaws are fully covering it. Okay. Now I can walk it. I can do it from both ends. All right. So my score started here. It started up here. I can see it here. But you notice it doesn't come all the way through. It's up close to it. And what we're going to do is to finish the runs, we're going to put it upside down, just like we would have if we put the Morton under it. But I want a bigger surface to work with. So I could take a paper towel and fold it a couple times and put it down and push down over top of it. I can use silk liner, do the same thing with it because it's spongy. You don't want it super spongy, but you just need a little bit. I find this little dense foam packing works real well for it. So I'll set that down here. And then I come back and look, see where I'm at. I know my spots are here and here. Now I'm just taking that's the one side, and then come back to the other side. It's just a slow and steady pressure, because if you do sharp jabs, just like with the running pliers, you're going to lose it. And there we go. Now there's no flares on this one, so I'm pretty safe. But for insurance policy, especially around points, that's where a lot of your flares will come around points. The file's got a curved side and a flat side. So you use whatever works best, depending on what you're working with. If it's a flat surface, use flat side. If it's curved, use curved. Now I'm doing over top of that. I should be over my box. So these are all safe now. So I'm going to turn around here, shake that off, make sure I don't have any more stuff on it. So this is called the flip and push method. Now I don't want to score on top of this because that sponginess can cause the glass to crack. So I have to move that out of the way each time. Okay, you don't want to go back and forth because that's hard on the cutter head. And glass cutters are not super cheap, so you want them to last for a while. And somebody might ask, well, how often do you have to change your cutting heads? Because they are replaceable. Whenever your score line starts having skips, that's generally when you do it. And again, if you're dipping, you just come over periodically and run across there to dip. So we can use running pliers to start it, or I can turn around and again use my Grozing braking pliers. Grab on each side of the line, pull sideways and lift a little bit. But notice I kind of lost my tip there. So whenever you have a double curve like this, I encourage you to use and go for the click. Then we'll go from the other end. Now, because these tips don't really hit on there, it makes it a little more challenging. We're going to slide in a little bit further. So, using a combination running pliers, either safety break with a flip and push method or a spongy surface, is one of the best ways to do this. Now, we're talking about inside curves by themselves. That'll be covered in another video. Thank you again for your time watching. Have a great day.